Hey everybody, Snowflarky's Emos, and I'm here today with my Goddess of Sweet Revenge deck. This is a deck based around this card here, which was one of the promos from the Legendary Collection Kaiba that came out a couple years ago. If you're not familiar with this card, Goddess of Sweet Revenge says while you control no cards, and this is the only card in your hand, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can discard this card, destroy as many cards your opponent controls, then you can special summon a monster from your deck. So pretty cool card, very restrictive, so very hard to use unless you're building around it like this deck, and certainly not good. So by no means this is not any kind of competitive deck I'm trying to make with this. This is just a fun pick up and play, a casual best of one with a friend, and if you get up against an unsuspecting opponent and can pull it off on them, it's very sweet to resolve, and this deck is designed to make that doable and possible. So with that, let's get into the card by card. So starting off, I am playing 3 copies of Goddess of Sweet Revenge. Now, given the nature of this card and that it needs to be the only card in your hand or on the field in order to activate its effect, playing 3 can seem strange, but not to worry. We have ways of manipulating our hand and field so that we will have only one of these in our hand. So I'm not concerned about playing multiple because I can just get rid of the other ones through our outlets to do so. And I'm playing 3 because, well, the deck's built around using this card, so I want to see it as quickly as possible. And given its stat line, its stars, it's not easily searchable. As I explained in the intro, Goddess of Sweet Revenge, if it's the only card in your hand and you have no cards on the field and your opponent declares an attack, you can discard this card, destroy as many cards your opponent controls as possible, and special summon a monster from the deck. So if you can activate that effect and let it resolve, it can be pretty powerful, and it's also just a lot of fun. So if you can pull, if I'm pulling this out on a casual duel night, I can just pull this out real quick, hit someone with an unsuspecting, I'll get a good laugh out of it, and it's very cool. So 3 Goddess of Sweet Revenge for the deck's namesake. Next up, I am playing 3 Eater of Millions. Eater of Millions is basically the main way I get myself set up to have Goddess of Sweet Revenge online. Eater of Millions is a card that you special summoning by banishing cards from your hand or field or extra deck face down. And, you have to banish at least 5, but if you banish at least 5, then you can special summon this card. So ideally, if you have Goddess of Sweet Revenge in your hand, you basically want to make it so that you banish everything else except 1 copy of your Goddess of Sweet Revenge when you summon Eater of Millions, and have Eater of Millions as your only monster on the field. Eater of Millions is, of course, a really nice monster because when it does battle, it banishes a monster face down, which is sick. And so that's pretty annoying. Your opponent will want to get rid of it, and if they do get rid of it and they leave yourself with only your Goddess of Sweet Revenge, well, they're open to you activating and resolving it. So Eater of Millions is a must for this. And next up, let's talk about what we're summoning off of Goddess of Sweet Revenge. I am playing 1 copy of Archlord Kristya. So Goddess of Sweet Revenge can special summon any monster from my deck. So, number of targets it could be. I figure a pretty powerful game-winning target is Archlord Kristya. It's a 2800 attack monster that basically, while it's on the field, neither player can special summon monsters, which is pretty cool. And so 2800 can't special summon. You've already board wiped a bunch of cards. If Sweet Revenge resolved, pretty nice, pretty powerful. And for that reason, glad to have Archlord Kristya as the main monster. But we're only playing 1 of it because we don't want to brick. Our backup monster is 3 copies of Inspector Border. What I like about Inspector Border is while it's not as powerful as Kristya, if we draw into Inspector Border, there's still use we can get out of this card. We're not playing many monsters, so we can, of course, normal summon our Inspector Border, a 2000 attack monster, and, of course, Inspector Border stops our opponent from activating effects as long as they don't control any extra deck or ritual type monsters, which, of course, is harder to do if you're not activating effects to get those combos off. So it's pretty nice. We can play it if it's in our hand, or if we've drawn Kristya, it's a pretty decent target to pull out of your deck with Goddess of Sweet Revenge. And hence, I am playing 3 copies of Inspector Border. Next, I am playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Those monsters are basically the main monsters of actually getting Goddess of Sweet Revenge to work. So everything else in this deck is mostly just a lot of filler, so you're going to see a lot of trap cards, a lot of disruption, and we're going to start with, of course, the go-to hand trap, Ash Blossom. You discard it to stop for your opponent from adding a card to their hand, or special summoning from the deck, or sending a card from the deck to the graveyard. So, number of great uses. Everyone knows Ash Blossom is a great card, so might as well have it for a disruptive tool. And that is it for the monsters in this deck. Next, we're going to go into our spell cards. I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. As you saw with my monsters, there's not a ton of extra deck plays to be made here, so we might as well turn our extra deck into card advantage. Pot of Extravagance, we essentially just banish 3 to 6 random face-down cards and draw a card for every 2 that we do so. We can't use any drawing effects for the rest of this turn afterward, but that's no big deal. Glad to just have the draw power. Next, Consistency Tool. I'm playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. You're not necessarily only, grabbing a key combo piece with Duality out of the top 3 cards is pretty important for setting ourselves up. And of course we don't need to summon Eater of Millions every turn. The only thing to note about Duality is that you may reveal a Goddess of Sweet Revenge in your hand, and if your opponent takes the time to read it, if it's revealed off the top of the deck, then they might be on to what you're doing. But, it's a risk I gotta take, because this card just helps me move things along and get a card that I'm looking for so much. And then lastly, for spells, I'm playing a copy of Card of Demise. If I'm not using Goddess of Sweet Revenge or Eater of Millions, then I'm not really special summoning this turn. And I'm playing a ton of trap cards, so Card of Demise just draws cards till I have 3 in my hand. And then since everything is mostly spells and traps, I can mostly set it all, so I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm discarding it all at the end phase. So seems to be working out so far. And that's it for the spell cards. Next up, we're getting into our trap cards, and do note before we get into them that this trap card lineup is completely subjective to playing against decks that I know my dueling group has. So do note that, when building these kind of decks, adjust your trap cards according to what you're going to be up against, and of course you're even welcome to play more hand traps. I'm just a trap card kind of guy. Starting off, I'm playing 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute, arguably one of the best trap cards you can be playing in the game. When the monster is summoned, you can just flip this card and destroy all monsters on the field. So pretty cool, very disruptive, can be very annoying to a combo. So, glad to have 3 copies of Torrential. Next up, 3 copies of Solemn Judgment, just the go-to say no card. And a nice card to top deck after we've resolved Goddess of Sweet Revenge, because we want to protect it from the outs our opponent may get. So Solemn Judgment helps us do that by paying half our life points to negate a summon or a spell or trap card activation. So pretty sweet. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force. Storming Mirror Force, of course, is a trap card that when your opponent's monster declares an attack, it bounces all their attack position monsters to the hand. So non-destruction, non-targeting removal, pretty nice, pretty handy to have, and glad to play it. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Drowning Mirror Force. This is a card I've been playing in here because there's a lot of turns where I may not have any monsters on the field. And of course, if you can resolve Drowning Mirror Force, it is a huge blowout card. When your opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you just shuffle all their attack position monsters back into the deck. Particularly useful because I have my brother who plays tunes quite a bit. So it has a handy bit in there. And of course, it's just pretty nice to have. And, I gotta risk it for the biscuit with the high payoff trap card. So if this resolves, a lot of times in, a casual duel, my opponent is just gonna scoop from frustration. It's like another kind of Goddess of Sweet Revenge, except it doesn't let me sit on Archlord Kristya. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Heavy Stormduster. This is definitely a call for my casual duel group, because when we play more casual duels, which is where I would play a deck like this, where I'm seeing a lot more spell and trap cards, seeing a lot more back row, so Heavy Stormduster gets a lot of work. You just target up to 2 spells or traps on the field and destroy them, and you can't activate your battle phase this turn. Not a big deal, we usually play it on our opponent's turn. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Waking the Dragon, kind of an alternate win con in this deck because I'm playing a lot of spell and trap cards. My opponent's going to want to activate their Lightning Storm or their Heavy Harpy's Feather Duster, or they're just going to want to blindly pop some back row. So I want to set up the punishment for any of those situations, and Waking the Dragon does that if the set card in its owner's control is removed from the field because of an opponent's card effect and is now either in the graveyard or banished. You can special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck, and we play targets in the extra deck that can win. Of course, this card can even bring out Archlord Kristya itself, which again is another pretty powerful win con. So do keep that in mind, that even if you banish everything good off of your extravagance, you got Kristya, and that can be pretty good. And lastly, for the trap cards, I am playing 3 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is pretty nice because we are playing lots of normal traps in this version. So Trap Trick just banishes a trap card from the deck, and we set another copy of a card with the same name. So it can get us any of our trap cards that we are particularly looking for. Do note that after Trap Trick is resolves, you can only activate 1 more trap card, so be certain you've blown through things that you want to blow through before you do Trap Trick. But it's nice, it can set you up for a Storming Mirror Force when you enter the battle phase. That'll force your opponent to end the turn, or a Torrential to disrupt the play, a Heavy Stormduster at the end phase to pop cards. If your board is getting wiped and you don't have Waking the Dragon, you can use Trap Trick to set Waking the Dragon. Just a lot of cool uses for Trap Trick that gives it a pretty good home in this deck. And that is it for the trap cards. Next, we're going into our extra deck. I am playing 3 copies of Link Karibo. This is kind of the only extra deck monster that matters in here because we don't have a deck built to summon lots of extra deck monsters. But what's cool about Link Karibo is that Eater of Millions can go into Link Karibo. So if we want to really get off Goddess of Sweet Revenge and we just have Eater of Millions on board and we want a way to easily remove it, well, Link Karibo is a good option because when our opponent's monster declares an attack, we contribute off Link Karibo and it will really be gone. So that's just a cool thing. It's just a good option to have, and that is the main reason we are playing it. Next up, everything else in this extra deck is a target for Waking the Dragon. So I am playing 3 copies of Last Warrior of Another Planet. If my this can be summoned off of Waking the Dragon. If my opponent pops Waking the Dragon while they don't have any monsters on board, well, I can summon Last Warrior from Another Planet. It does destroy all my monsters, but then neither player can summon, which can blow out a lot of decks, especially if they don't have a way to remove this without summoning a monster. So keep that in mind. That card can just outright win you some games. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Naturia Exterio. I finally got my 3rd copy thanks to the new Hidden Arsenal set. So Naturia Exterio is pretty nice. It's a 2800 attack monster that, as long as you have a card in your graveyard to start things, can pretty much infinitely negate spell and trap cards. So if you're in a matchup where the spell and trap cards are doing all the work and a deck can't do anything without those resolving, well, Naturia Exterio is your go-to. It's not a once per turn effect. It can be done, either player's turn. Great card. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon is a 3,500 attack monster that is unaffected by card effects. Makes it pretty hard to deal with. You either got to kaiju it or beat it by battle. So, awesome. And lastly, I am playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon, 4,500 attack monster that cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. Not as good as being unaffected, but sometimes in certain matchups it can be good enough. And with 1,000 extra attack, then Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon to boot is pretty cool. Definitely worth considering. And of course, instead of attacking, you can pop a card on the field each turn, which is pretty cool. Just to have that little bit of flexibility. So definitely a good monster to also have for the Waking the Dragon package. And that is it for the extra deck. So that is it for my Goddess of Sweet Revenge deck profile. Like I said, it's just a fun, silly deck to bring out in a best of one casual environment and, try to set someone up to walk into the Goddess of Sweet Revenge unsuspectingly and wipe their board and then summon an Archlord Kristya. When it resolves, they're always sideswiped by it and pretty hard to come back from their board wiped and Archlord Kristya preventing them from special summoning, which is pretty sweet. And for that reason, I figured I might as well play it. Most of these cards I've had for other reasons. I just had to get another copy of Goddess of Sweet Revenge, so I figured I might as well play this out. It's a fun way to use this sick card that I wish was more usable, but since it's not, we're doing the best we can. We've built around it, and it allows me to play it in some capacity, which is pretty fun. So with that, that's it for the video. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Do you like cards like this? What's any gimmick cards that you really like that are not good but you've built around it? I'd love to know. And you'll see more of those from me on this channel later. All right, I'll catch you in the next one.